Today is July 15th, 2016, and we are interviewing Joe Bandy at the American Legion State Convention in Springfield, Illinois. Mr. Bandy is 67 years old, having been born on September 5th of 1948. My name is Sue Burkholder, and I will be the interviewer, and Kathy Folks will be the court reporter for this interviewer. Mr. Bandy, would you please state for the recording in what war and branch of service that you served?
Vietnam, and I was in the Army.
Okay. Well, let's start with just a little biographical data, some early data, where you were born and maybe a little bit about your parents and what their occupations were.
Okay. I was born in Hillsboro, Illinois. My father was Charles Bandy, and my mother was Eileen Bandy. And my dad ran a variety store in Raymond, Illinois. He was also the fire chief, and he was also a bookkeeper. My mother was a stay-at-home mom during my time, and then about the time I went to the Army, she went back to work at the First National Bank of Raymond.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I do. I have one brother and 3 sisters.
Okay. And were they older or younger?
They're all younger than me.
Okay. And what were you doing before you entered the service?
Well, I graduated from Lincolnwood High School in 1966. And in the fall, I went to Wabash Valley College in Mount Carmel, Illinois. I spent 2 years there and received an Associate of Arts in Agribusiness. That was in June of 1968. In the fall of 1968, I enrolled in Southern Illinois University. And I went to there in the fall quarter, and I started the winter quarter. However, the draft board told me they were going to draft me because when I transferred from Wabash Valley to Southern, I lost some hours, and it actually put me back to being a sophomore. At that time, you needed to maintain rigor in your educational process, or else you were eligible for the draft. So they said they were going to draft me, so I quit school, and I decided that I'd just work until I had to go. So I did a few odd jobs around the area for that period of time until I was drafted I was inducted in July of 1969.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
My name is Jimmy Hunter. We got a little mixed up on our signals here, so I'll be doing the rest of the interview with you. So, which branch of the military did you serve in?
The Army.
The Army. And when were you in?
July of 1969 to July of 1971.
Okay, so you were in Vietnam then, right?
Right.
Yeah. Why did you choose the Army particularly? Or did you get drafted?
I was drafted.
Okay.
So once I was drafted, I just stuck with the course, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few in my inductee class that did go to the Marines because they were asking for some, but most everybody went to the Army.
And what was the highest rank you achieved?
I achieved the rank of E5, Specialist 5th class.
What did you do?
Well, I was a trained military policeman.
Oh, okay.
And so, I don't know, you may have some other questions we can talk about.
Okay. And so you were active military. How did you feel in your first days of the service? how did you feel about going in and being in the Army and so forth?
Well, it was kind of interesting because, in my case, I went through St. Louis Induction Center.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you're around there most of the day, you get sworn in. And then they send you, or put you on a bus with a bunch of other guys, and you go to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And then you get put in a barracks with just a bunch of guys that you're really not in a basic training company yet. You're just kind of in waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the first few days are kind of interesting because these old barracks are, they're old wooden barracks, and you had to have a fire watch at every door. And so somebody had to stay, you had to take turns and do your fire watch. And
So
and it was hot.
Make sure the building didn't burn down on you.
That's right. Yeah. It was hot and humid. So it was interesting times. And of course, during the day, you had to do something. So they always asked for volunteers for certain things. My dad, being in World War II, he always told me, don't volunteer to be a truck driver because you might be on a wheelbarrow, But anyway, to make the story short, I think I worked at a golf driving range for the first week, picking up golf balls that the officers were hitting out there,
Hard job, huh?
It was a hard job. Yeah.
Then where did you wind up going through basic training then?
I did at Fort Leonard Wood.
Oh, you did it right there at Fort Leonard Wood, huh? Did what you learned at basic training make you question everything you knew before you joined?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay.
I mean, it was sort of like this. Once you knew that you were drafted and you were in, and it was going to be 2 years of your life, you might as well make the best of it. And so that's what I tried to do.
Okay.
And I tried to take my training serious, because if I would end up in a war zone, I wanted to try to survive and help my comrades survive as well.
Do you remember your instructors there, and what were they like?
The DIs?
Yeah.
Well, most of them were pretty much horses' butts,
Yeah.
I mean, they called you about everything. Back in those days, they called you about whatever they wanted to. And they kind of tried to humiliate you and, and a little bit knock you back. But, after you got along in the basic a little bit and you got to have a relationship with them a little, it wasn't quite as bad then, because you could see what they were trying to do for you and how they were trying to train you.
So you understood what they were doing then. So.
Yeah.
What did you do after basic training?
Went directly to Fort Gordon, Georgia for AIT.
You didn't get any leave or anything?
No leave.
Okay. And so you were saying that you were trained to be military police.
Right.
So how did that go? What was your...
Well, it went pretty well. It was kind of interesting work. It was probably something that I had some interest in at that point, and it was good to learn the techniques and the methods of policing in the military.
Did you use any of that later on in life? What you learned there?
Well, I'm sure I have, but
No,
not in a police.
No, you didn't become
role.
a police officer.
No, I did
okay.
not.
And how'd you adapt to the military life? Including the physical regime, the barracks, food, and social life, and so forth.
Well, again, it's just it's what you make of it.
Okay.
I mean, you can't really fight it, and if you try to make the best of it, I think it is somewhat rewarding.
Where'd you serve? Did you wind up going overseas or anything?
I ended up in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and so after AIT, I did get like I don't know, 20 days of leave maybe,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I got to spend Thanksgiving at home that year,
Well, that's nice.
but I had to leave before Christmas.
Yeah.
So we went to Germany and they took us to Frankfurt, and you got into one of those replacement companies where you're just kind of waiting for them to call you to tell you where you're going to go. So.
Did you get yourself mentally prepared for this before you?
Well, I didn't have any way to know exactly how it was going to be, but anyway, I went to. They called us to go to a confinement facility in Firth, Germany. There were 5 of us, and it seemed like the reasoning behind it is they were wanting some people that had a little bit of college, because I think the other 4 had all at least bachelor's degrees, maybe even master's degrees, and they were wanting people with college, I think, to help staff the prison.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's that confinement area. You're meaning a prison that you
Yep.
went to. Okay. And what was the weather like when you were there? We hear a lot of these stories about.
Wasn't
Snow
really
and
a lot
bad
different
weather.
than Illinois.
No, okay.
Not really a lot different.
Same thing, seasonal,
Yeah,
so forth.
same
Yeah.
seasons. Yeah.
Did you ever experience any of the brownouts over there?
No, I can't say that I did.
Okay. And what kind of food did you eat over there when you were there? Did you local fare, local water, stuff like that, or
Well,
all just the Army stuff?
we were in a small detachment. It was the 43rd MP detachment. And if I recall, there were somewhere around 85 guys in that detachment. But we had to run this prison 24 hours a day. So there wasn't a lot of room for people being gone on leave. And so, it was a seniority type thing. Food was pretty much out of the mess hall until I got to be an E5. And then in E5, you could get separate rations. And then, you could go to the non-commissioned officers club, or you could eat wherever you wanted to, because you got paid.
Got a little better fare.
Yeah, got a little better food. And the food wasn't terrible. I mean, it could be on some days.
Sure.
But
That happens at home.
you have to understand when you're feeding, I don't know, there may have been 1,000 or 1,500 soldiers on that concern that I was at, and they probably half of them went through that mess hall. So
Now, was that soldiers there, or was that prisoners you're talking
no,
about?
that was soldiers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how many? How big was this prison? How many prisoners did you have?
There was we would max out at about 100. Typically, I think we ran about 75 to 80.
Okay. And
We weren't supposed to have any real bad people there, but we did have for short periods of time.
was it just you 5 guys that were taking care of the prisoners, or
No,
were these 1,000 guys part of that too?
No, the 1,000 guys were just, there was a mechanical unit there also at that base, and
They were just stationed there.
yeah, they were stationed there. So it was just like I say, there was like 85 people that ran, that were in our detachment that actually operated the prison.
Okay.
So,
What'd you do for barracks? Where'd you sleep and stuff?
well, we had, on this caserne, there was the old World War II buildings that were there, and it was a pretty nice place. It was.
You didn't have to do like you did in where you were at for basic and have fire watches and stuff.
No,
Okay.
didn't have to do that.
Little better atmosphere. huh?
Yeah, and we actually had rooms
Yeah.
that there would be like 4 to 6 in each of the rooms, so you had a little more privacy.
Was your equipment that you used there in that was it up to date, or was it old stuff that they gave you?
Well, it was probably dated some because we weren't in a war zone, so we didn't have priority on equipment. So, but it was functional. The vehicles that we had were modern at that time.
Did you just have regular transportation vehicles, or did you have armored vehicles too, or what?
We just had Jeeps and cars and
Okay.
stuff like that. We did prisoner transfers, so we had vans, and they were really pretty new. But then, if you get out on the Autobahn and you're taking prisoners from where we were to Frankfurt or one of the other prisons, they drive pretty fast over there. You gotta,
Oh, yeah.
and you don't want to get out someplace and not be able to make it.
Did you have to wear body armoring or flak vest or any of that kind of stuff?
No,
No, you didn't have to deal with that. Did you have anything like the Kevlar helmet, or did you guys just have the steel pots?
Steel pots,
You guys had the
yeah.
steel pots, huh? You having any experience with IEDs?
no,
They didn't have them, did they? Then those days. Did you sustain any injuries while you were?
no.
No. Did you see any combat or witness any? No.
No, the only anything that was remotely in that vein would be when we had some uprisings in the prisons and we had to go in and physically take control. And we used a lot of tear gas. So we went in with gas masks on, and you had to do what you had to do. And then we had a perimeter guard shack that whoever sat out there had a shotgun and a .45.
So
So
all your duties were away from the front line. You went,
Yeah.
Did you have to have an interpreter in your unit to deal with any of these prisoners, or?
no, they were all U.S. service.
They were all U.S. Okay. We were on the quick reaction force for your division, or did they not have that then either?
Well, the only reaction force we had, if anybody ever got loose, a prisoner got loose, either by escaping or through some other means, we had to go get them, because the Germans, the public, they would not help us.
Okay.
So we did have a couple instances like that in the period that I was there, where we had to. Typically they go to the train station or try to go to the airport, and so.
So the locals didn't help you at all with anything like that?
No, locals wouldn't help
Okay.
with that.
And how many units were you attached to?
How many units?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know exactly. That'd be kind of difficult to know. I guess geographically we serviced, some part of Germany,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure exactly how that line was drawn.
Okay. You just took like a general area, and that's what.
Well,
that's
there
what
were
your guy-
stockades at Firth, where I was. There was one at Frankfurt. There was one in Berlin. There was one in Kaiserslautern, and so Germany's a pretty big place. So I would say most of the south part of Germany, we would have probably been, we would have taken prisoners from them, unless there was a problem, personality-wise, at another facility, and then you might get somebody from, another geography.
Mhm. Did you guys have to deal with any National Guard units over there?
No,
Okay. Was your tour ever extended?
no.
Okay. You said you moved up through the ranks to E5 and that. What were what'd you have to do to get there, and was it easier for you to do that?
Yeah, it's been a few years ago, but it seems to me like, going from private first class, I probably was when I went over to Spec 4. It seemed like that was a pretty easy one, and it seemed like going from Spec 4 to Spec 5 was you had to have enough points to get that done, and then
What'd you have to do to earn these points?
well, I think you just had to have a position that in your unit that warranted that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't recall
That's fine.
exactly how that
Right,
worked, but
Hey, we're all getting there a little bit,
Yeah.
The memory's not quite as sharp as it
Yeah.
used to be. Did you ever receive any medals or citations?
well, I mean, good conduct medal.
Mhm.
Hopefully everybody gets that,
Mhm.
unless you're dishonorably discharged, I
Right.
assume. I did compete for Soldier of the Month, Soldier of the Quarter, and Soldier of the Year in our brigade.
Mhm.
And I did receive the distinction of Soldier of the Month, Soldier of the Quarter, but Soldier of the Year I was beat out by somebody else. So.
Did they do like a little ceremony or anything?
Well, it was.
Or
I mean, to be chosen, you had to be nominated by your commander,
Mhm.
and then you had to go through an interview process of many commanders that come together and they ask you
Mhm.
military questions, protocol, and just what's happening in the world type things.
Okay.
And so they made their decision off of that criteria.
And you said earlier, I believe, that you didn't have a lot of time off or
We did have a lot of time.
recreation because you had so much work to do, right?
It seems like we had to be like at 80% strength, and you take 85 guys and be at 80% strength doesn't allow too many to be gone.
Right.
And when you have a lot of higher ranking folks, well, they're going to get first dibs in that. So.
When you go
Get
ahead.
3-day passes were pretty easy to get. I
Yeah.
mean, and you could, in 3 days, you could go to Austria, or you could go to Frankfurt or Munich, or a lot of interesting places.
So that's what you did
Yeah.
for your entertainment. Then you
Yeah.
took little side trips and so forth. Is
Yeah.
that's all you really had to do, or what?
Well, that's pretty much what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what kind of friendships and camaraderie did you form while you were there? And was it just with guys right in your unit, or what?
Yeah, pretty much. When you're in a unit of such small numbers, you form a special bond with those folks.
Mhm.
And, the only thing that deters that is that you've always got people leaving and new people coming in. But there's that core, those core folks that are there most of the time with you, where you have that special bond with. And I do keep track.
Do you still keep in touch with
Keep in
some of
touch
them?
with some of the guys that I serve with.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty nice. Did you have anything with you or anything special that you used for good luck that you thought was your good luck charm or something?
No, I really can't say that I
Okay.
did.
And what was the main form of contact that you had with your family and friends? Did you do
There
letters or phones or?
Yeah, letters was really the only choice back then. I called home one time,
Mhm.
and it was like either Christmas or New Year's it would have been like 1970. It was like 6 months before I was going to come home.
Mhm.
And you call the operator and have them set up an overseas call, and then they call you back and tell you, okay, we've got your call. And so that whole process was just, I think it took like 3 or 4 hours to get the call to go through. So you just didn't call home very often unless
Yeah.
you had to. And so you wrote letters, and Mom sent packages and cookies and stuff like that.
Did that ability to do that and be able to get that sort of letters and did that boost your spirits? Did it help your
Oh, yeah.
morale while you were there?
Oh yeah, it's necessary to have that. And you can kind of share that kind of you can share your goodies and some of the news with some of your
Mhm.
friends, and it just brings you closer together, I think.
How do you think today's wars are different, than those days?
Well, I don't know. I think what's different now, and this is the only thing I know is what I've read and heard, but I think, entire units have gone together from their home base to the war zone and probably stayed together, and then they come home together. And that's that wasn't so back then during Vietnam. There was just a lot of continual replacement, and people were thrown in those situations.
You think that helps the morale now more?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would think it might be better if I just went over to the military museum here in Springfield, and of course it's centered around the Guard because that's a Guard unit.
Right.
And that's what they talked about a lot, is you trained together, you were in the Guard for 4, 5, 6 years, and if you were called up, well, you went together. And so you had prior knowledge of those folks before you went, who you could depend on. And I guess I would see that would be a boost for your morale, if you knew who you could depend on.
How do you think that civilians can be more aware and more informed nowadays of what's going on in these wars? Or these, not wars, but I say skirmishes.
Yeah, I would guess that, if they have a desire to know, that you can know now, I would think. But I guess you have to have a desire to know what's going on.
You think the electronic ages help communications?
I do.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a little bit about when you left. Do you remember the day you left?
I do.
The day your service ended. Where were you?
The day I left? Well, we left our unit, and I think it was those 5 guys I went with. I think we were 5 guys that left.
You left from Germany?
Yeah. And so we went to Rhine-Main Air Force Base in Frankfurt, and they put us on a plane and flew us back to Fort Dix in New Jersey. Yeah, I remember that. So
then all 5 of you guys were kind of discharged together, and that's how you got home on the plane, right?
Well, to Fort Dix, yes.
Yeah. How'd you get home from there?
That was really a weird deal, because they tried to play with our mind a little bit, made us do some police calls and everything, it's crazy. As I recall, you finally got through processing after some harassment, and then I think they sent us to Reagan National, maybe, or
Washington.
Yeah. And then from there we could get a plane to wherever we needed to go.
Okay.
So that, as I recall.
Okay. How did you handle your mindset when it was time to come home? Was it difficult, or you were just glad to be over with and done?
Well, I think my mindset was that I was glad it was over with. I was glad to go home, because I had family at home that I hadn't seen for quite a while. So, it was time. It was just time to go home. So.
How did your family and the community receive you when you got home?
Oh, my family. It was great. Yeah. It was a great homecoming to come home. I think people you don't know of the public, they probably wondered what you did while you were in the service. And I think there were a lot of sad situations back then when a lot of soldiers came home because they weren't received very well from people that they really didn't know. It was just public, So.
But all in all, you felt like you were pretty
Yeah, I felt like
probably
it.
well received, right?
Well, and I kind of recall coming home. We flew into St. Louis, and they didn't have those jetways that they have now. You went down the steps
Mm-hmm.
of the plane. Well, and then my family was right outside those steps
Mm-hmm.
because back then it was, security wasn't
Right.
like it is today. So, so it was great. It was fun.
Since you left the military, obviously you went back to work and so forth. You still working? You retired? Or?
I just retired March 1st of 2015.
If you don't mind us asking, what did you do?
I was I worked for Pioneer Hybrid. It's a seed company.
Yeah.
I was a plant manager at a production plant at Leroy, Illinois, for 30-some years.
Did you go back to school and?
I did.
After you came back, you did, and
I did.
Did you use any of your military benefits
Yeah,
to help you?
I did do that too.
Yeah.
Used the GI Bill,
Okay.
and I did get my bachelor's degree right here in Springfield it was Sangamon State then. It's U of I Springfield now.
And you feel that the benefits available to you, were they adequate and complete, or do you feel like they could have done more for you, or?
I felt it was.
You were happy?
I'm very appreciative for the benefits that I had,
Okay.
especially after I've educated 4 kids and know what they had to pay, and I had to pay for it.
Very good.
Yeah.
And you said before you've stayed in contact with some of your war buddies, so to speak, and then I know as we're doing this through the American Legion that you belong to the American Legion. Do you belong to any other veterans organizations?
No, I don't.
Okay. So, sort of wrapping this up, how do you think your military experiences affected your life?
Oh, I think that you look at the world a little differently. There's a lot of people that think that it's so terrible to live in the United States, and those people need to go someplace else and experience what it is to live somewhere else. The freedoms and the benefits that the public has here in the United States is just second to none.
So that's some of the life lessons you've learned from your military service that way, And I'm going to do it right now. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Has anyone else ever thanked you for your service?
Yeah, I've been thanked today even.
How does it make you feel?
It does make you feel good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And has your military service impacted your feelings about the war and the military in general?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not one to get real negative about things. I've got some friends that are pretty negative. You can sit around and you can talk about all those negative things, or again, you can be proud of what we've done as a country and how we've tried to do things the right way.
What's the most positive thing you took away from your experience in the military?
Most positive thing? Well, there's a certain discipline that you develop in the military, and I think that's kind of good.
Okay.
Having some discipline with your life, whether it be, getting up early and getting to the task at hand or whatever, but there is that discipline that you tend to. I guess the other thing that I think about often is that, there's not a lot of things that you can't really do if you really put your mind to it. Even there's just a lot of things you can do if you really put your mind to it.
So you just think it just kind of gave you a positive attitude and some discipline.
Right.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear or view this interview?
Well, again, I guess I go back to my reference to about our country. You know, I feel like it's a really great country, and even though it has faults, and hopefully we can make some more improvements, but we live in a good country, and it's because of military service, not only of myself, but all our predecessors. You know, my dad was in World War II. My brother was in Vietnam. So I just feel like all those people have contributed to where we're at today.
Is there anything that you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
No, I think that's pretty...
No. Anything you'd just like to express?
No, I think that we've been pretty thorough.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you for your time and again for your service to our country.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I don't either. Well, maybe we just stop it here. Yeah. I don't know.
Get up and move now. That's the hardest part. What's that red thing?
I think that's the